Kieran Grant didn't expect to lose the bet, especially not to a woman in jeans and a faded Cubs cap who'd just schooled two grown men in darts. Double bull. That's game, the woman said, tossing her last dart with a snap of her wrist. It stuck dead center, right next to her previous two. She turned to Kieran, a grin tugging at her lips. You owe me a drink. Kieran stared at the dartboard, then back at the woman. You hustled me. Not my fault you underestimated me. She held out her hand. Name's Callie. Callie Hart. He took it, her grip firm and warm. Kieran. Callie raised a brow. No last name. Grant. She paused, her eyes narrowing a little, but not in the way that said she recognized the name. Just curiosity. Well, Kieran Grant, I'll take a whiskey sour. And you're paying. The bar was loud and dim, tucked away on a side street in downtown Chicago. Kieran had ducked in to escape a business dinner gone stale. He wasn't used to losing at anything. Not darts, not bets, not negotiations. But here he was, handing over his black card to a bartender because a stranger had just wiped the floor with him. Callie sipped her drink and tilted her head. You look like the kind of guy who doesn't like losing. I don't. He leaned against the bar, watching her. She had this easy confidence, like she didn't care what anyone thought, but not in a try-hard way. Just real. She laughed. You're a sore loser, huh? I'm a competitive one. Same thing, she said, setting her glass down. So, what's your deal? You don't look like a regular at a place like this. Kieran shrugged. Needed a break. From what? Posing for GQ? He chuckled. Business meetings. Suit talk. Boring stuff. She nudged her drink aside. You in finance or something? Sort of. She raised a brow. He didn't elaborate. Callie didn't push. Well, Mr. Mysterious, you're lucky I'm not charging interest on that drink. I could afford it. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Not bragging, just reflex. Her eyes danced. You don't say. He liked her. He hadn't liked someone like this in a long time. Most people either wanted something from him or were too polished to be real. Callie was neither. You play darts often? He asked. Only when I'm bored. Or broke. She grinned. Tonight. I'm just bored. He laughed. Same. They talked for over an hour, and it didn't feel like small talk. She told him she worked as a freelance graphic designer, mostly for small businesses. She loved dogs, hated olives, and had a brother who lived in Denver. Her accent hinted at somewhere further south, but she waved that off when he asked. Alabama. Long story. Moved here 5 years ago. He didn't ask for the long version. Not yet. When she finished her drink, she stood. Thanks for the whiskey, Mr. Grant. It's been fun kicking your butt. You're leaving. Callie tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah. Got work in the morning. Kieran hesitated. Can I see you again? She paused, surprised. You don't even know me. I know enough to want to. She considered him for a long moment, then pulled a pen from her bag and scrawled her number on a napkin. Just don't take me to a steakhouse where the menu doesn't have prices. He smiled. No promises. When she walked out, Kieran sat back down, napkin in hand, and stared at the dartboard. He'd lost a bet tonight. But somehow it didn't feel like losing. 3 days later, he called her. Thought you'd ghosted me, Callie said, answering on the second ring. I was trying to play it cool. You're not good at that. Want dinner? There was a pause. What kind of dinner? Something with a menu. Prices included. She laughed. All right, but I'm not dressing up. He picked her up in a sleek black car. Not a limo, he wasn't trying to scare her off, but a luxury sedan that still hinted at more. You clean up nice, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. You said don't dress up. I said I wasn't dressing up. You clearly didn't listen. He smiled. I wanted to impress you. The restaurant was upscale but cozy, brick walls, low lights, a rooftop view of the city. Kieran had the corner table reserved. No one around them. Callie looked around. Okay, you're definitely not just in finance. He took a sip of his wine. I own a few companies. Startups. Tech mostly. She blinked. You're serious? Yeah. She leaned back. So I hustled a millionaire. He chuckled. I think I'm the winner here. They shared a bottle of red, ordered too much food, and talked like it wasn't their second time meeting. By dessert, she was telling him about the watercolor tattoo she wanted to get on her shoulder, and he was telling her about the time he accidentally bought a vineyard in France. You accidentally bought it? She repeated, laughing. It was a merger. The vineyard came with the company. She shook her head. That's not a normal problem. He leaned in. You're not a normal girl. There was a moment of silence between them, charged, electric, but soft. Neither of them said a word. Then she smiled. You're trouble. You have no idea. After that, they saw each other more. Not every day, but enough. He took her to an art exhibit. She dragged him to a dive bar trivia night. He sent her a box of gourmet chocolates after she told him she liked the cheap kind. She dropped off coffee at his office without calling ahead. They didn't talk about labels or what it meant, but it was something. Something real. And Kieran started to realize. Losing that bet might have been the luckiest damn thing that ever happened to him. The first time Kieran showed up uninvited, Callie opened the door barefoot, paint streaked across her cheek, and a half-finished canvas leaning against her kitchen counter. I brought lunch, he said, holding up a brown bag that smelled like roasted peppers and melted cheese. She looked at him with one brow raised. How do you even know where I live? You left your mail in my car last night. Had your address on it? That's not even remotely okay, she said, stepping aside anyway. But I'm hungry, so I'll let it slide. He stepped inside, taking in her space. The apartment was small but full of color. Plants spilled from the windowsills and books lined a shelf that sagged slightly in the middle. A sketch pad lay open on the coffee table beside a jar of brushes. You painted that? He asked, nodding toward the canvas. Work in progress. I got bored with it halfway through. Kieran handed her a sandwich and sat across from her on the floor. So you just abandon things when they don't hold your interest? Only the things that don't fight back, she said, biting into the bread. Art doesn't argue. He studied her for a moment. You're not what I expected. Let me guess. You thought I'd be the kind of girl who sees a guy in a tailored coat and starts batting her lashes. I didn't think you'd be the kind of girl who leaves half her groceries on the floor because she got distracted by a brushstroke. She looked behind her, saw the bag of apples tipped sideways, and laughed. Okay, fair. He picked one up and tossed it her way. She caught it with one hand. You ever think about doing this full-time? He asked. Painting? He nodded. I do it full-time, she said, chewing. Just not for money. So you paint for yourself. I design logos for money. I paint to breathe. Kieran leaned back on his hands, watching her. What would you do if money wasn't a problem? She tilted her head. Buy a cabin in the woods. Paint in daylight. Sleep with the windows open. Maybe teach kids who can't afford art classes. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, that's not a bad plan. She eyed him. What about you? If you weren't busy building empires and buying French vineyards by accident. He laughed. I'd probably be bored out of my mind within a week. She rolled her eyes. Of course you would. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before she asked, Why are you really here? I wanted to see you. You saw me last night, and I wanted to see you again today. Callie looked at him, really looked at him. You don't strike me as the type who slows down for anyone. I'm not. So why me? He hesitated, then said, Because when I'm with you, it feels like the world shuts up for a second. She blinked, caught off guard. He stood a second later, brushing crumbs off his pants. I'll let you get back to your painting. You could stay. He paused. I mean, if you want, she added quickly. You could paint something. Or mess it up. Or sit there and judge my brushwork. He reached for a brush. I'll try not to ruin it. 2 hours later, he left with blue paint on his forearm and a lopsided tree on the corner of her canvas, which she refused to cover up. It's honest, she said. Like you tried and didn't pretend to be perfect. He looked at her for a beat too long. Then he kissed her. It was slow, like a question. She answered it with both hands pulling him closer. After that, things shifted. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But undeniably. Kieran found himself adjusting his schedule without thinking about it. He moved meetings earlier, pushed dinners later. He started ordering 2 coffees in the morning without needing to ask how she liked hers. He kept a key she'd tossed him one night in case he needed to drop something off but hadn't used it yet. One Saturday he took her to the lake. Not the glossy tourist spot, but a quiet inlet where the wind cut sharp and the water reflected gray skies. She stood at the edge, arms out, hair whipping around her face. "Bet you don't come to places like this often," she said. "No," he admitted. "But I can see why you do." Callie turned to him. "You ever think you're too used to things being easy?" He folded his arms. "Easy how?" "People saying yes. Doors opening. Opportunities just falling into your lap." He didn't flinch. "Yeah. Sometimes. And? I don't think it means I don't work hard. But I know I've had advantages." She nodded slowly. "At least you're not one of those guys who pretends they built everything with bare hands and no help." He looked at her. "I don't pretend anything with you." Her expression softened just slightly. They didn't kiss at the lake. They just stood there, the silence comfortable, the air cold, their hands close but not touching. Later that night, back in her apartment, she pulled out a thick envelope. "What's that?" he asked. "My lease renewal." "You thinking of moving?" She hesitated, then said, "I don't know. This place is small. The building's old. But it's mine. Feels like me." He didn't say anything for a second. Then, "If you ever want something bigger, you don't have to ask." Her eyes snapped up. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Offer fixes like I'm a problem to be solved." "That's not what I meant." "Yeah. But that's how it sounded." He took a breath. "I'm not trying to change anything about you. If you ever wanted something different, I'd want to be part of that." Callie stared at him. Then she said, "I'm not used to people offering without an angle. Maybe I don't have one. Or maybe you do. You just don't realize it yet." He nodded slowly. "Maybe." But he didn't push. And she didn't ask him to leave. They stayed up late, eating leftovers and watching a black and white movie with the volume too low to hear. Kieran didn't fall asleep until her head dropped on his shoulder and her fingers curled into the fabric of his sleeve like she didn't want him to go anywhere. Callie sat at her desk, her knees tucked beneath her as she worked on a logo for a new bakery opening in Logan Square. The design was clean, vintage-inspired, with soft curves and a warm palette. But her focus kept drifting. She adjusted the kerning on the business name, then stared blankly at the screen. Kieran hadn't called in 2 days. Not that he owed her anything, but he always called. She reached for her tea, now lukewarm, and stood abruptly. The apartment felt too quiet. Before she could think better of it, she grabbed her coat and headed out into the chilly afternoon. The city buzzed around her, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. She hadn't seen Kieran since the night he'd left her place with that unreadable look in his eyes. She hadn't asked questions then. She didn't want to chase someone who didn't want to be caught, but the silence since gnawed at her. She ended up outside the building where he'd once taken her for dinner, an unassuming brick structure, hiding a rooftop view that had taken her breath away. She didn't go inside. She just stood there, wondering what the hell she was doing. "Callie!" She turned. Kieran stood across the street, dressed in charcoal slacks and a navy coat, his hair tousled by the wind. His eyes searched hers like he hadn't quite expected to see her there, like the universe had thrown them together again without his consent. "I was on my way to see you," he said, crossing to her without hesitation. She folded her arms. 2 days. No call." "I know." She waited. "I needed time to figure something out," he said. She didn't answer. "I want you to come with me," he added. Her brow lifted. "Now? Right now?" She hesitated, but his expression didn't waver. And after a moment, she nodded. He opened the passenger side door of a black Audi, and 30 minutes later, they were pulling through the gates of a private airfield. Callie stared at the jet waiting on the tarmac. "This is not what I expected," she said. Kieran didn't explain. He just took her hand and led her up the steps. Inside, the plane was sleek and impossibly quiet. Cream leather seats, polished wood paneling, a bottle of champagne already chilling in a silver bucket. "Where are we going?" she asked, buckling in. "New York." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" "There's someone I want you to meet." She tilted her head. You're being cryptic again. I'm not trying to be, he said. I just need you to trust me. The plane lifted off, and for a while, they didn't speak. She stared out the window as the skyline shrank behind them. When she turned back, he was watching her. You ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't lost that bet? He asked. Honestly, she said. You probably would have walked out 2 minutes after finishing your drink. He let out a soft laugh. You're probably right. She leaned her head back. So what's in New York? My sister. Callie blinked. You have a sister? Her name's Elle. She runs a non-profit in Harlem. I haven't seen her in almost a year. Why not? His jaw tensed. We had a falling out. I gave her funding for her organization. She didn't like the terms I attached. Callie didn't speak. I was trying to protect her, he added. But I came off like I didn't trust her judgment. So why now, she asked. Because you reminded me what it means to let people make their own choices. He looked at her. And because if I want you in my life, I need to stop controlling everything. She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, I didn't ask you to fix anything. I know. They landed just after sundown. A black SUV met them at the hangar, and Kieran gave the driver an address in East Harlem. As the car moved through narrow streets, Callie glanced at him. You nervous? He almost laughed. Terrified. The building they pulled up to was old but well kept. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly floral. Kieran buzzed the 3rd floor. A woman answered the door in jeans and a sweatshirt, her curls piled high on her head, her expression unreadable. Kieran, she said. Elle. He hesitated. This is Callie. Elle looked between them, then stepped aside. Come in. The apartment was small but full of warmth. A toddler's drawing hung on the fridge beside a calendar covered in sticky notes. A little boy peeked out from behind a hallway and promptly ran off when he saw strangers. Luca, Elle called. It's okay. The boy returned a moment later, clinging to her leg. Callie knelt down. Hi there. I like your dinosaur pajamas. Luca grinned, then disappeared again. Elle watched the exchange, then turned to Kieran. So, you brought someone? Yeah, he said. She's important to me. Callie's heart thudded. Elle studied her. You look like someone who doesn't put up with his crap. Callie smiled. I do my best. They sat on the worn sectional, and Elle poured them tea. The tension eased slightly as the minutes passed, but the air still crackled with things unsaid. I'm not here to talk business, Kieran finally said. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Elle set her mug down. That's new. I mean it. I know you do, she said. And I'm glad you brought her. She makes you look less like a robot. Callie choked on her tea. Later, as they stood at the door saying goodbye, Elle pulled Callie aside. Don't let him get away with anything, she said. I won't. And don't let him forget who he is when he's with you. Callie blinked. What do you mean? I mean, he's different around you. Softer. Real. He needs that. Back in the car, Kieran exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. You all right? She asked. He nodded. I didn't expect her to forgive me so easily. She didn't, Callie said. She just loves you anyway. He looked at her. Like you do. She didn't reply. He reached for her hand, and she let him. That night, they stayed in a penthouse suite a few blocks from Central Park. The windows stretched floor to ceiling, the city glittering beneath them like a million quiet promises. As Callie stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a robe embroidered with gold thread, she found him standing on the terrace, a glass of bourbon in hand. She joined him, the wind tugging at the hem of her robe. You didn't have to bring me here to prove anything, she said. I didn't bring you here to prove anything, he replied. I brought you here because I didn't want to do it alone. She leaned against the railing. I don't need the jets or the city views, she said. I just need to know you're not going to disappear when things get hard. He set his glass down and turned to her. I'm not going anywhere, Callie. She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, she believed him. The gallery walls were bare. Callie stood in the center of the large industrial space, her arms crossed over her chest as she studied the empty white. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air, mingling with concrete dust and the faint scent of eucalyptus from a diffuser someone had plugged in near the back. This place is massive, she said without turning around. Kieran stood behind her, his hands in his coat pockets. I thought you'd like the light. She glanced over her shoulder. You rented it? Bought it? Her jaw tightened. Kieran, not for me, he said before she could finish. For you. She turned fully now, her expression unreadable. You don't get to just hand me a gallery. I'm not handing you anything. I'm offering space. A starting point. She walked toward one of the tall windows, the late afternoon sun casting golden streaks across the floor. You don't understand. This is everything I ever dreamed of. And that's exactly the problem. He stepped closer. Why? Because it's not supposed to happen like this. She ran a hand through her hair. I fought for every inch of my life. Every client, every freelance job that barely paid rent. And now this? Just because you can. Kieran's voice was quiet. You think this erases what you've built? I think it shortcuts it. He nodded slowly. Then let's do it your way. She lifted her chin. What's that supposed to mean? I'll sign the deed to your name. You can mortgage it. Lease it. Fund it however you want. I won't touch it after today. She stared at him. You'd really let go of control like that? I'm not interested in owning you, Callie. I just wanted to see what your art would look like on these walls. Her voice dropped. You already have. Kieran blinked. What? That tree you painted, she said. It's the first thing I'm hanging. Whether or not it's crooked. His mouth curved into the kind of smile that had nothing to do with charm and everything to do with relief. She looked away quickly, her throat tight. You scare me sometimes. He stepped closer. Why? Because I'm falling for you so fast it feels like gravity's broken. Kieran didn't hesitate. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn leather box. Her breath caught. It's not what you think, he said, opening it to reveal a silver key. She blinked, confused. It's the key to my place, he said. The real one. Not the penthouse, not the hotel suite. The one I bought in Lincoln Park before I ever made a cent. It's small, barely modern. There's a cracked tile in the bathroom I never fixed. She stared at the key. I want you to see where I came from, he said. Not the version you've seen when I'm in a tailored coat or arranging rooftop dinners. The version that still eats cereal out of the box and forgets to water the plants. Her voice was quiet. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. Callie froze. He stepped closer. I don't know when it happened. Maybe the night you painted that crooked tree. Or when you told my sister not to let me get away with anything. Or maybe it was that first moment, standing in that bar, when you sank 3 darts like it was nothing and made me realize I'd never met anyone like you. She took the key slowly. You're serious. I've never been more. Her eyes filled, but she blinked fast. I didn't expect this. Any of it. I didn't either. Callie looked around the gallery again. This place. It's terrifying. Everything worth doing is, he said. She turned to him. You really think I could pull off a show here? I think you could pull off 10. She laughed through the tears now threatening to fall. You're exhausting, you know that? Only on weekdays. She took a shaky breath. I love you too. Kieran reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Say it again. She leaned into him. I love you. He kissed her, not with urgency, but with all the gentleness of a man who had waited his whole life for this exact moment. When they finally broke apart, the city outside had shifted into the soft glow of evening. Weeks later, the gallery buzzed with life. People milled about the space, champagne flutes clinking, murmurs of admiration floating through the air as guests admired the collection. Callie's paintings lined the walls, bold, aching, tender pieces that pulled strangers into her world. In the center of the far wall hung the crooked tree. No plaque, no signature, just a simple note written beside it, handwritten in black ink, proof that imperfection can still be beautiful. Across the room, Kieran stood in a charcoal suit, drink in hand, watching her. She wore a navy wrap dress and a pair of worn boots. Her hair pinned up with a paintbrush she'd forgotten was there. Someone asked her a question, but she glanced over at Kieran before answering, her smile lighting something in him he hadn't known needed light. Elle stood beside him, sipping from a glass of seltzer. She's magic, she said. She is, Kieran agreed. You finally figured out how to stop fixing things that aren't broken? He nodded. Took me long enough. Elle nudged him. Don't screw it up. I won't. Later that night, after the last guest had left, Callie sat barefoot on the gallery floor, legs tucked under her. Kieran joined her, handing her a half-eaten macaron from the dessert table. That's all that's left? She asked, accepting it. Someone snuck out with the rest. She took a bite. Tonight felt like a dream. He leaned back on his hands. Except it's not. She looked at him. You ever think about the night we met? Every damn day. Callie grinned. You were so smug. I could practically smell the self-satisfaction. That was cologne. She laughed. You lost a bet. And won everything. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet pouch, and dropped it into her hand. Inside was her original dart. She looked up. You kept it. Of course. It's the moment everything changed. Callie stared at the metal, her voice soft. You know what the best part is? What? We never talked about forever. But somehow it just happened. Kieran kissed her forehead. Forever's already started. And in the quiet that followed, with the gallery lights dimmed and the city humming outside, they sat together, two people who never saw it coming, but who now couldn't imagine a world without each other in it. Rain pattered against the windows of the Lincoln Park apartment. The one Kieran had once said still had a cracked tile in the bathroom. He hadn't exaggerated. Callie had nearly slipped on it that morning. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, stirring sugar into her tea with one hand while holding a folded sketch in the other. It was a concept for a mural she'd been asked to paint on the side of a youth center in Bronzeville, her first public commission. The idea of it both thrilled and terrified her. Behind her, Kieran adjusted the sleeves of his Henley as he leaned against the doorframe. You're going to say yes, aren't you? He asked. She didn't look up. I haven't decided. You have. She finally glanced back. It's permanent. It's not like a canvas I can tuck under the bed if I mess it up. That's kind of the point. You're not supposed to hide anymore. She set the sketch aside and turned, arms crossed but not defensive. You always sound so sure of me. I am. Callie studied him for a moment, then walked over and wrapped her arms around his waist, her head resting against his chest. You're going to be at the unveiling, right? I'll be the one dragging the mayor over to the corner and making him look properly impressed. She laughed into his shirt. You'd do that, wouldn't you? I'd do worse for you. They stayed like that for a while, the hum of the rain blending with the quiet of the room. Later that week, Callie stood in front of the massive brick wall that would soon carry her signature. The project had drawn attention quickly, local press, neighborhood leaders, and a handful of kids from the block who kept stopping by to ask what the mural would look like. She hadn't told them yet. She wanted it to be a surprise. Kieran visited every evening. He never hovered, just set up a folding chair nearby, laptop balanced on his knees while she painted. He brought her sandwiches she never asked for, water bottles when she forgot to stay hydrated, and once, a portable speaker so she could play her favorite playlists while she worked. On the 6th day, she painted a tree. Not crooked this time. Strong. Rooted. Its branches reached wide, stretched with color bursts of orange and violet and teal that bled into the shapes of open hands, outstretched faces, fragments of dreams. She didn't explain it to anyone, but Kieran knew. He didn't need the words. On the final day, they stood together as the neighborhood gathered. There were folding chairs and music and a table of homemade empanadas someone's grandmother insisted on feeding to Kieran, who accepted every bite with a level of respect that won him half the crowd. Callie gave a short speech, awkward, humble, heartfelt, and when she finished, Kieran stepped onto the small stage beside her. I wasn't planning to say anything, he began, but I need to. Callie blinked, surprised. He looked out at the crowd. This mural belongs to the neighborhood, but it also belongs to the woman who made it. The same woman who once told me she paints to breathe. What she didn't say is that she helps the rest of us breathe a little easier, too. Callie's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting. I'm not much for public declarations, he continued, but I don't want to waste another second pretending to be the man who keeps his emotions tidy. He turned to her then, pulling a small ring from his pocket, not flashy, not oversized. Just a simple band with a single, square-cut sapphire set in the center. Marry me. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. A few kids started clapping prematurely. Callie stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" she whispered. "I've never been this serious," he said. "I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. I want to be the guy who gets paint on his shoes because he stood too close to your canvas. I want to wake up in a house that smells like coffee and turpentine. I want you, every version of you, every day." She didn't hesitate. Yes. The applause was thunderous, but she barely heard it. She was already in his arms, already kissing him like the world had shrunk down to just the two of them. 3 months later, they were married in a converted greenhouse at the edge of the city. The ceremony was small, only those who mattered. Elle stood beside Kieran, her son Luca walking down the aisle with a tiny pillow and an even tinier tux. Callie's brother flew in from Denver and cried halfway through his toast. The flowers were simple, wild, untamed, a mix of sunflowers, eucalyptus, and deep red dahlias that matched the accents on Callie's dress, which wasn't white but a soft, stormy gray. They danced under fairy lights strung between trees, barefoot in the grass, laughing when Kieran stepped on her toes, and she pretended to be mortally wounded. That night, they returned not to a hotel, but to the Lincoln Park apartment, the place where it had all become real. Kieran had fixed the cracked tile. Callie had painted a mural on the bedroom ceiling, constellations and galaxies in deep blues and golds, visible only when the lights were off and the world was quiet. She lay beside him, tracing lines on his chest with her fingers. "Do you ever miss the old version of your life?" she asked softly. "The one without color?" he replied. "Not for a second." He kissed her shoulder, then her jaw, then the corner of her mouth. "You sure you're ready for forever?" she teased. "I'm already in it." And he was. The gallery continued to flourish, hosting quarterly showcases that featured young artists from underserved neighborhoods. The mural became a landmark, and kids who once passed by now brought sketchbooks and crayons to draw beneath it. Kieran scaled back his role in the business, choosing instead to invest in local programs, some of which Callie helped design. He never stopped being who he was: intense, strategic, fiercely driven, but with her, he was something else too. Grounded, open, human. They traveled Florence, Kyoto, Marrakesh, but always came home to Chicago, to their sun-drenched apartment filled with canvases and records and half-finished projects. Their love didn't settle. It expanded. Not in loud declarations or perfect days, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of two people who had chosen each other completely. Forever wasn't a promise. It was already happening. Every minute they woke up beside each other, and neither of them ever wanted it to stop.